Well, there's cost and some other things involved when you start talking about a small to medium-sized developer. Um, there is the obvious cost of, hey, I'm out there trying to compete in the same environment. I've got materials I have to buy that I'm not buying in volume because maybe I'm a small developer that I'm building 20 homes, but that factory's building 200. So I've got a purchasing power issue that I'm dealing with. I'm getting materials where I can bring an employee that wants to come to the factory who can get a 5-day paycheck versus a 2 or 3-day paycheck. It's not controlled by the weather. I might be able to pay them a few dollars an hour less versus the guy that actually maybe shows up sometimes and doesn't on site. All those things increase cost, increase the time of delivery for a project, and increase time on a project increases risk for bad things to happen, which increase my cost. So modular brings, I'm going to say, project certainty into it, which to me has a value. But modular overall just is well, I hate to keep harping on it. It's a better way to build because it lets me create schedules that I can depend on. One of the things that kind of go off on a little tangent with you, it really is. People don't understand project scheduling with modular. It's very different than site building, and so if they don't have somebody like, say, a Volumod or somebody experienced to help guide them in their path, they can make mistakes. It's really finding that trusted partner to help you. If it's your first project, you want to be able to know that what the new process is, because you scope things differently for a modular project than you do for a site build project. Timing is different. You spend way more time in design in modular than you do on site build, because you can hurry up, you can get your plans done, you can start putting up, start building walls, and you don't have to make all your color selections or your design choices up front. Hey, larger developments, yes, everything's defined up front. Smaller developments, maybe not so much. Modular forces you to do that because it's all built in a factory. You have to order it, so you can get really cost certainty based on that. But yeah, it's I think having that partner that helps you understand the scoping, understand what to expect, so you get success on your first project. I hate to see one and done builders in modular. The first time builder, like, especially when you're trying to evaluate the cost effectiveness. If you're evaluating your plumber, your electrician, your HVAC mechanic, depending on where that's being done, you go to give them the scope of this project, and if they think it's just like the last house or the last project you built, they're going to price it the same way. They don't realize the factory's done 50, 80, 70, 90, whatever, pick a number percent of it. So now they're giving you a price. Well, now you get the wrong price from your plumber, you get the wrong price from your electrician. All of a sudden you're like, well, hold it, this is going to be more expensive. Well, you need to have that trusted partner to help you understand the scoping to go to your project, your subcontractors, and get that number done. And then on the first one, if they haven't done it before, now there's a learning curve with them. They're learning what the limited scope is and how to do it. They're learning that the factory did maybe more than they thought, and they're not overthinking it and spending and wasting time that way. There's any number of, and then there's also on the drawings, understanding what on-site by others means in the drawing from the factory. Where does the factory stop and where does the subcontractor or the general contractor on site begin? And then what is the cost of that? And that's usually the very first. I always tell people it's Murphy's Law on the first one, and maybe I shouldn't say that, but if, on the first one, the goal is to try to make mistakes small, because there's a learning curve. And then the second one, it's going to get better. And on the third one, it's when you're hitting on all cylinders and you're really seeing the true value of modular. The goal is to make that learning curve small up front. I see like electrical is a good example. In the factory is going to install the wiring. They're typically, if there's a panel box that's going to be installed and it can be installed in the factory, they're typically marking a circuit number on the wire. But on that whip or on that pigtail, that it might be too long, that neat electrician wants to cut it off and make it all neat to go into the panel box. If he didn't move the mark back on the line before he cut it, he just cuts it and does what he normally does. He just turned a 3-hour project into a 3-day project. And it may sound crazy, but it's subtle things like that happen on first projects for just an example for electricians. For plumbers, it's understanding that, they're maybe switching to PEX and they haven't used PEX before, they've been using CPVC, and it's just learning that process. They may seem subtle, but to the trades who are used to doing it the same way all the time, I don't think we truly appreciate how much of an earth rattling process this is for them. And it's just getting through those first projects. And it'll just take time. I mean, it really is, like you said earlier, it's an education process, and we'll get there. It's just a little patience and a little time to get them trained. Cost save, well, and there are realistic cost savings, in projects you're building. Um, we do a lot of projects myself in the Northeast, and so and much like here in Indiana, the breadbasket of manufacturing in the Midwest is Indiana, and so that cost of labor that might be lower here can go to the bigger cities, and other locations. Maybe it's a 5 or 10%. Again, don't confuse the manufactured, the M words, and think you're going to get a 50% savings. That's not realistic. But could you realize a 5 or 10% savings on the initial construction, not just be at break even? And that's probably very realistic. It's just, again, you're not going to get the 50% savings that people, want to propagate in the industry.
Yeah. But the 50% time saving, now that actually is doable.
That is doable. That's actually, and that goes back to that modular math. I mean, if you're doing a project that is revenue producing or has operating revenue, and I don't want to just harp on the revenue side, projects have a cost and the time value of money is there. I've had developers say, well, you're funding my project for me. And it's like, well, no, we're not. And they're like, well, you kind of are. And I'm like, really, how? And they're like, well, we would normally be 9 months on this project. We've had the funds would have been outstanding. I would have paid X amount of interest because we're taking payments as progress in the factory at a much faster pace. We've compressed the project, and not only are we getting them operating revenue on the back end, we've saved the cost of money in the project on the front end. So you got to look at the project again. You got to look at the complete project pro forma. Your cost of funds as well as your operating revenue really add up to make modular a better way, and that's really what you just said. 50% speed savings is a lot of money savings.